consequences of his actions. Remember Herring Week?
And when he kidnapped Jonathan Agnew.
He managed before we arrived, though, didn't he? I mean, Vosgarth was in a sort of working order.
Probably because Aunt Elizabeth was around. And I have a feeling she knew how to handle him.
But that shows it can be done. If we could think of some sort of strategy for keeping him in check.
If we could do that, who knows? Africa might become a possibility.
Oh, Richard.
Apparently the floozy with the headscarf will be giving us direction.
Charlotte? Yes?
I doubt she'll know much about it, not from the look of her.
She'll be fine, John.
Barely old enough to be out on her own.
Next day, John and Claire went to the theatre to rehearse their crowd scenes.
We will need to get a few things straight before we start.
What sort of things?
Backstory, for one. We'll need to know our backstories.
I don't think we've got any. We're just villagers.
We're not just villagers, Claire. We are sinister villagers.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
In fact, I'm down here as fourth sinister villager. I will need to know whereabouts I live in the village and with whom.
We've only got an hour and a half to rehearse.
And what is it that's made me sinister? And most significantly, why am I fourth?
As far as I can see, we all go on as the main woman comes out on the veranda to look at the stars, and we stay there looking at her till the lights go down.
A cardboard cutout could do that. We have to give a rounded performance, and to do that we must put in the groundwork.
By knowing our backstories?
Yes, and where the pauses come and the practicalities of the stage.
Exits and entrances, they'll tell us that.
It's not that simple, though. The stage is like a cricket bat. It has a sweet spot. A place where you can command the attention of the whole audience. We'll need to know that.
So we can avoid it?
Avoid it?
Well, it's not for us to hog the limelight, is it?
Oh, no, of course it isn't.
John?
As I say, I'll clarify some of this with Charlotte.
John, you're not up to anything, are you?
Charlotte, a couple of tiny questions before we block this, if I may.
He's just making sure he'll be noticed.
Yes. I expect that's what it was.
What else would it be?
No, nothing. I'm just worried a bit, you know, that he could throw some sort of spanner in the works as far as Africa's concerned.
There is no Africa if we don't apply to go.
And we can't apply unless we sort something out for John.
You had any ideas?
No. On the one hand, we can't leave him here on his own, and on the other, we can't sell up and move him out.
No, that wouldn't be right.
This is his home.
Exactly. What about Lux?
Lux?
She's a bright girl. She knows him well.
It won't work.
Why not? She could take a room at Vosgarth, keep a subtle eye on him.
She's going to college, Richard.
Oh.
I did tell you.
Yes.
I've spent the last couple of years trying to persuade her to go for it, and she finally has.
And that's it. There's no realistic alternative.
As a matter of fact, Charlotte was quite taken aback by the extent of my knowledge.
Well, I'm sure she was.
One or two of my questions quite flummoxed her.
But you found out what you wanted.
Indeed I did. The two things most essential to my plan. One, the precise moment when I should launch into my paean to Breckhow.
Ooh.
And two, the perfect spot from where to deliver it.
And they have no idea you'll be doing it, I suppose.
Not the slightest.
I was running the vacuum cleaner over the stairs next afternoon when halfway up, the machine conked out. Oh, now what? Blessed thing. It was at that spot where you find yourself looking through the banister rails at the landing above. At Aunt Elizabeth's portrait, in fact, and it feels as if she's looking at you and on the brink of saying something.
We won't say a word, will we, Claire?
It's happened a time or two before. This sense she's about to speak, to make some sort of statement or intervention.
We won't say a word.
She's never said a word. Of course she hasn't.
Silent and sinister. I might try for that.
What? This time, though, I did hear something. A voice. But it wasn't Aunt Elizabeth's. Claire! Claire!
I can't stop. I'm off to the theatre.
Margaret Cardigan.
Margaret Cardigan?
We didn't think of her. It never crossed our minds.
Think of her for what? You don't mean to...
It's obvious. She knows John as well as anyone.
But, Richard, they couldn't be more different. They're chalk and cheese.
Yes, I know. That doesn't mean it wouldn't work, though.
I think it probably does. She drives him up the wall, and he's very brusque with her. She'd never put up with it.
Yes, I know that. But I've got a feeling we could at least ask. See what she says.
You ask her, Richard. I have to be at the theatre, but I can tell you I won't be holding my breath.
Me? You're asking me?
The chance to speak to Mrs. Cardigan came sooner than I expected.
Have I got this right?
I was walking down the zigzag path on my way to the theatre when I met her coming the other way.
You want me to stay at Bosgarth while you go off gadding round Africa?
It wouldn't exactly be gadding, Mrs. Cardigan.
I'll do it.
But if you think about it, there may well be considerable advantages. But you'll do it?
I'd love to.
Really? Not a moment's hesitation. Good old Aunt Elizabeth.
Why not? I think it's a champion notion, Richard. Mr. Hector and I have always got on.
Have you?
Carved out of the same Yorkshire rock, as he put it. Oh, yes, we see eye to eye on most things. Mind you, I want my own room.
What?
At least to begin with. He'd be in agreement with that, I take it.
I don't know.
You don't?
We haven't told him yet. I thought I'd sound you out first.
Oh, well, perhaps we should tell him now.
Yes, no, we can't. Not now. He's not in.
Oh, of course we can't.
He's gone to the theatre.
It's opening night. I should have remembered.
No, I've got a ticket. I'm supposed to be going there now.
And he'll be gearing up for his speech.
His speech?
No, not speech. Gearing up for his walk, his walk on.
They're not speaking, are they?
Not really, no.
Not really.
No, I mean, I'm not supposed to say.
I'm not supposed to say what?
About Mr. Hector's speech. I'm supposed to make no mention of it in case I accidentally let the cat out of the bag.
Oh, Margaret, he's not planning to say anything, is he?
I think it'll be harmless enough.
Oh, he is, isn't he?
Well,
He's going to make a speech.
in a way, I suppose.
In a way.
He says there's a moment when no one speaks. They just stand there, and that'll be the ideal time to say a few words about Breck Owl.
No, we can't let him do it.
He'll be there by now.
Then I have to get to the theatre. I have to stop him. I got to the theatre just before the play was about to start. I had no idea what to do next. So I took my seat and contemplated the options. As far as I could see, there weren't any. So I sat there, rigid with anxiety, as the house lights went down and the play started to unfold before me. I couldn't follow a word of what anyone was saying. It made no sense to me. There was a veranda and a young couple who kept appearing to argue about something or other. After about 15 minutes, the sinister villagers came and arranged themselves in the shadows of the garden, staring at the veranda. They remained upright, expressionless, and perfectly still. Or rather, 5 of them did. One lurched into position like Richard III and stood there swaying slightly, breathing heavily. I held my breath, but he said nothing. Obviously, this wasn't the moment of his intervention. I managed to catch Claire's eye, tried to signal to her.
Stop, John. You have to stop.
but I couldn't tell whether she understood or not. Eventually I couldn't stand anymore. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah. I went back to the foyer, which was empty, apart from a girl counting tubs of ice cream onto a tray. I could see a set of doors leading to the bar, and the corridor leading I knew not where. I chose the corridor. It took me to another corridor, which led to a staircase.
Richard!
And there was Claire, hurrying towards me down yet another empty corridor.
What the hell are you doing?
She was still wearing her sinister villager raincoat.
What was all that arm flapping about? I was trying to concentrate.
And I was attempting to get your attention.
You got everyone's attention. It looked as if you were trying to land a plane.
You have to keep an eye on John.
Is that what it was supposed to be? I didn't get that from what you were doing.
Well, I'm sorry. You try miming John Hecht is about to make a speech. For goodness sake, try to stop him.
He's what?
He's been rehearsing a speech with Margaret.
What about?
Does it matter what it's about? He'll ruin the play, and any mud that sticks to him will stick to us.
We have to stop him. We're due back on in 5 minutes.
At that moment, John lurched into the corridor behind Claire. John, wait! We need to talk.
I don't.
No, please, don't do anything rash. He said nothing to that, but turned and bolted back down the corridor. John, come back here.
Get after him, Richard.
Where are you going?
To try and cut him off.
He had a good 30 yards on me, and when I rounded the corner, the corridor was empty. John? John? I only want to talk. There were 2 doors off. I took the second, I don't know why, and caught sight of him heading up another staircase. By the time I got to the bottom, he'd reached the top, where he found Claire blocking his way.
Gotcha.
All right, you've got me. I yield.
I'm sorry, John, but this is important.
I suppose it was too much to expect Margaret Cardamon to keep her trap shut.
What were you thinking of?
I was thinking it was a good idea to express a few telling remarks about the town I love.
On stage, in someone else's play.
I also thought you'd try to put the lid on it between you, which is why I didn't tell you. Too much to expect that you might recognize a golden opportunity when it's presented to you. Oh well.
His shoulders dropped, and he looked as if he was about to sit down on the step. Instead of which,
Breckhow deserves better.
he sprang up the final step and darted through yet another door. I bounded after him, and Claire...
Follow him, Richard. Through that door.
Claire encouraged me to follow,
Don't follow him, Richard. Not through there.
or possibly told me not to. I think I was expecting her to say one thing, and as I pushed through the door, heard a kind of alternative echo, and... John! I found myself in a strange sort of gloom, with a block of darkness towering over me. A shadowy figure moved towards me, making piss-off hand signals. It wasn't John. Then I caught sight of a rectangle of bright light with John silhouetted against it. He stepped away from me into the light, and I followed.
You're too late, Richard. You can't stop me now.
I was on stage, with a bank of lights blazing down on me, and what seemed like 600 pale faces staring at me from the auditorium.
You can watch the sun rise over that silver band of sea to the east.
John, stop!
Don't interrupt.
Oh, of course not. No one must ever interrupt John Hector.
You know what your trouble is? You cannot cope with any deviation from the straight and narrow.
Well, I'm sure you're right, but I'm learning fast. I have to deal with you lurking around every corner.
Don't talk soft.
It's been chaos and catastrophe at every turn for these last 3 years, and now this.
You've no sense of adventure, lad. You can't cope with change in any form.
No sense of adventure? You think going to Africa for a year wouldn't be an adventure?
What?
Although thanks to you,
Africa?
Yeah, thanks to you. That's probably not happening now.
Are you off your loaf? Who's talking about Africa?
We are. Claire is and I am. We were planning to go to Africa,
What?
which would have been a year well and truly off the straight and narrow, till you put the kibosh on it.
Leaving Vosgarth without telling me?
Well, why should we tell you?
Lad,
What possible difference would our absence make to you?
of course it would make a difference.
You plough on regardless, going your own sweet way. I don't even think you notice we're around half the time.
Of course I notice you, lad. I'm that fond of you both.
Fond?
You must know I am. I've never tried to stop you if that's what you want. But I would miss you.
Would you?
I'd miss the pair of you terribly.
John? We stood there looking at each other, while someone in a lighting box somewhere slowly brought the lights down.
I was watching from the wings. They really thought it was part of the play. They'd seen John before, of course, but when you came on, it was a complete surprise to them.
It was a complete surprise to me. Hardly knew where I was.
You were very commanding, I thought.
I was angry, Claire. All the dances he's led us.
I didn't know he cared.
No.
He's quite a complex man, isn't he?
That's one word for it. We can't really go now, can we?
I don't think we can.
Even if they agreed to take us, we couldn't just abandon you.
I was thinking,
John.
Hello, John.
I thought I'd run this by you concerning this adventure of yours.
No, John, you don't have to. I said more than I should have done.
Don't chip in, Richard, please. You only complicate matters. I've been pondering our options here, and I believe I've come up with a solution.
We were just talking about it, John.
No doubt you were.
We've decided not to go.
What? Nonsense.
It was probably unrealistic anyway.
Unrealistic? It was the best idea you've had in months, lad.
No, I didn't think it through.
Think it through and you'd miss the boat. You can think things through later.
We really don't have to go, you know.
Tell me this. Have you ever in your life contemplated a huge leap of faith like this?
Well,
Have you, lad? Ever?
taking Vosgarth was a leap of faith.
And have you ever regretted it?
There have been moments.
In all honesty?
No, John, I've never regretted it.
Then it's time you took another. It's as the poet says, Richard. Look if you like, but you will have to leap.
You're saying we should go.
I am, lass.
They might not even take us.
Don't worry about that. I'll have a word with them if you like.
Oh, no, perhaps not.
I can be quite persuasive.
Yeah, but if we go, well, what about you?
That was my thought. We could get Margaret Cardigan to move in while you're away. We'd manage Vosgarth between us. What do you say?
Do we really need this? Richard?
By mid-September, we were packed and ready to leave.
Richard, are you sure we need this photo?
What is it?
That actress, Dr. Felicity of Forensics,
Tiffany?
looking cool and simple.
I thought it would remind us of when we went over to Dissop and John stole her BAFTA.
Well, the case is crammed. I can hardly shut it. And we do have that poster from Herring Week to remind us.
Yes, all right. We'll still be here when we get back.
Let's hope so. We're leaving Vosgarth in the hands of John Hector and Margaret Cardigan, remember?
Right. Well, you go ahead. I'll bring this down.
Claire,
John,
you'll see I've organised a trolley for you.
oh, thank you.
You'd never have managed otherwise. Taxis waiting at the foot of the zigzag.
Thank you.
I feel so sorrowful now it's come to it.
We'll be back.
You'll look after yourselves, though, and each other.
Of course we will. And you must too.
Oh,
Keep an eye on him.
I will that.
Goodbye, Margaret.
We'll be all right. We're in Brick How. It's you two that's bothering me.
You're mithering, Margaret. Give it a rest and pull yourself together.
And
Don't
don't
worry about the
B&B.
B&B. What's that?
You don't have to worry about the B&B. We've taken Vosgarth off the register.
Well, no need for that.
Well, we don't want you
We're
bothered by
perfectly
it.
capable, aren't we, Margaret?
Oh, yes.
Yes, but you really don't have
We'll
to.
re-register. Advertise for guests.
No, John, don't do that.
Don't give it another thought. Margaret and I'll take care of everything.
Take care of what?
It's all right. I'll tell you later.
Well, goodbye, John. I'd just like to say, I mean, the past few years have meant such a lot.
Say nothing, lad. There's no need.
Of course there's a need, John. Come here. I'll miss you. You know that, don't you?
Yes, all right.
I took a tentative step towards him, my arms half spread. He looked momentarily startled and held up a small package between us. What's this?
A small parting gift.
Oh, that's so sweet.
A bound copy of my tribute to Breck How.
Your speech?
I like the one you buggered up. You'll be able to read it on your flight.
We put the last case on the trolley and wheeled it towards the zigzag path. I turned for a final look at Vosgarth. John Hector at the gate, one arm stiffly lifted, like an umpire signalling a bye.
Goodbye!
Bye!
Then I saw a tiny movement at the upper landing window. It looked like an old lady silently looking down at us. But I couldn't be sure.
In Walk On, Richard was played by Paul Ritter, Claire by Kate Duchenne, and John Hector by Philip Jackson. Mrs. Cardigan was Sue Jameson, and the theatre director, Nicholas Murchie. Holding Back the Tide was written by Nick Warburton and directed by Sally Avens.
BBC News at 3 o'clock. The Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has described the leadership of Thames Water as a disgrace, saying the utility company, which has £18 billion of debts, must carry the can. Shareholders have been asking for a significant rise in bills in return for an investment of £500 million, which they've now withdrawn. The regulator Ofgem has rejected a 40% increase in bills over the next 5 years. Mr Gove agrees that customers shouldn't be the ones who are penalised.
The answer is not to hit the consumers. The answer is for the management team to look to their own approach and ask themselves why they're in this difficult situation. And of course the answer is because of serial mismanagement for which they must carry the can.
Thames Water says the money is needed to invest in infrastructure and to address environmental concerns. Fighting is continuing between Israeli forces and Palestinian gunmen around 3 hospitals in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military says its 11-day siege of Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City has resulted in the killing of at least 200 Hamas and Islamic Jihad fighters. Palestinian officials said innocent people had been killed. The Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has launched the party's local election campaign by promising greater control for local communities, economic growth and policies that could be paid for. Speaking in Dudley in the West Midlands, Sir Keir said he wanted to be campaigning for a general election, but the Prime Minister had bottled it. A man in his 40s has been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter in connection with the death of the Gogglebox personality George Gilby. Mr Gilby died after a fall at work. He'd appeared on the Channel 4 show and also reached the final of Celebrity Big Brother in 2014. A recorded message from King Charles has been played at the Royal Maundy service, which has taken place at Worcester Cathedral. The King, who's being treated for cancer, praised those who extended the hand of friendship, especially in a time of need. BBC News.
Let's focus on you. Make yourself comfortable, clear your mind, and take a slow, deep breath in. 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. And again, using the music as your guide. To help you find a moment for yourself, join me, Izzy Judd, and our meditation guides as we tackle everything from stress to gratitude. The Music and Meditation Podcast. Listen on BBC Sounds.
In half an hour, in Open Book, Johnny Pitts talks to the award-winning Welsh writer Caris Davis about her latest novel, Clear. Set in the remote Scottish Isles of the mid-19th century, it's described as a profound depiction of